Hey folks, welcome to another week's The Live Life Aggressively show. Sincere Hogan, got Mike Mahler on the other line. Got a great guest today, man. Very interesting topic we're going to cover today.
Yeah, great topic. We've had a lot of people come on the show and talk about the athletic performance side of mixed martial arts or fight game. We've had Sabina Scala come on episode 64, talk about strength training for MMA, and then we had Corey Beasley on episode 172. But there's another component of optimal athletic performance, and that's the mental side of things.
Right.
Today's guest is really going to break that down, and he works in particular with a lot of combat athletes. One, for example, Matt Brown, who we've had on the show many times. So without further ado, we're not going to do any of the shout-outs until the end. Actually, we're not going to do any shout-outs. Because I didn't go in and make a list, all right? How about that?
Not today.
You guys, you'd have to wait another week to hear your name. Self-indulgent listeners. And, we'll do the housekeeping for the show at the very end and talk about some other ideas that we have coming up down the pipeline. So anyway, without further ado, we've got Joshua Manuel of FightHypnosis.com. Joshua, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
And you wanted to remain in an undisclosed location, so we're not going to tell our audience where you're at today.
Oh, perfect.
Now, how did this whole thing start for you? How did you get into the mental side of the fight game?
Well, around 15 years ago, I was helping coach a boxing class. And there was a particular coach who would come in and work with some of the kids using visualizations. It wasn't specifically to do that, but it was part of what he had taught the kids. And there was an inordinate reaction to the visualizations that were used. So they could take something that may have been problematic in their technique or their overall attitude, and literally within minutes, they would become different fighters. They would be able to leave poor habits behind. They would be able to install new habits. They would be able to visualize something like a hook or a jab and then perform it entirely differently based upon a single visualization.
Well, what's going on in these visualizations?
Basically, you look at the exact structure of a particular experience that you want to have. So let's say, and this is a little bit different from the mindset stuff itself, but one of the visualizations that you can find that would perhaps improve a technique, let's say someone's throwing a hook and the power, of course, is generated off of the hips, and for some reason their form is not as good as it could be, as it is with most performances altogether.
Right.
What you could imagine is something simply like a straight pole going from the top of the head all the way through the spine into the ground. You can imagine it rotating on ball bearings, and then you would slowly take the person through the different senses and different internal representations of what's going on to the point where their unconscious mind starts to relate, well, what would it be like for a pole to be there? What would it be like for the movement to be more smooth, more automated, more mechanical? And then the conscious mind sort of lets go, so there's less stress. And you start performing based on these internal representations of different things that you already had. So it may be similar to, maybe as simple as just relating the unknown to a more efficient known.
So you're not visualizing the specific move you're trying to improve. You're more visualizing an effect you're trying to produce.
That's actually the best way to look at it. If you can take something and kind of apply it as a metaphor or something that you already have learnings of in a different state, then your mind can sort of bridge the gap between the two.
I think that's where visualization gets a bad rap, is that often people think of visualization as you're visualizing all of the moves you're going to do. You're visualizing how the fight's going to play out. And then when you get in there, it's totally different than what you visualized, and you choke.
And then you have lost your plan, so you don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are spot on with that, because people will kind of try to build these overly precise visualizations, and then the question is, of course, what happens when it doesn't go to plan? So there's different things you can do as you're going through the fight and visualizing different processes. You can make things a little bit more vague. You can offer the unconscious mind, or, you know, the client as you're speaking to them, and you can say something like, and as you land the strikes that you want to, and the movement is going exactly the way that makes sense to you, then they can sort of go in and fill in the gaps in the way that they want.
Right.
And if you have a particular finish, particular strike, particular technique that you want to rehearse, you can do that 100 times, 1,000 times, and make it more as part of a toolbox than an exact scenario.
Yeah. So I remember the first time not the first time, but one of the first times I gave a public lecture presentation. I remember I did a visualization series before, but pretty much right before I went on, I go, okay, here's what I'm going to say. Here's how I'm going to say it. Here's how the crowd's going to react. What I didn't visualize is getting up there and just going completely blank. And I went blank so bad. I choked so hard that if someone asked me my name at that exact moment, I wouldn't be able to answer. So I just panicked. And then it was highly embarrassing. My trainer had to come up and save the day and all that. It's like, oh, let's give Mike a hand for effort. It's just even more humiliating. But the next time around, I was like, okay, next time that happens, what do? You just stay calm. You can even say, hey, you know what? I completely forgot what I was about to say, which I've done many times teaching courses around the world where I've gone blank. It happens almost every time. I go, man, what was I just saying, folks? And then someone will yell out, oh, you were talking about leptin. I'm like, okay, good. That's it. And I get back on track.
Right.
So I think sometimes, like what you said, when people try to make the visualization so precise, you can't take into account all these extraneous factors or possible outcomes that may occur.
Absolutely. Anything can be turned off if it's overly precise or if you're kind of getting yourself caught up on the details. What you can absolutely do at any point in time is change things so you're fighting off of an internal state that's created. And that's actually what the most effective technique is when you take somebody through a fight mindset session, is you install the most resourceful state for them. So it may be total aggression. It may be, and the other interesting thing is that when you're installing peak performance states, you can take different states and combine them. So you can take something like aggression and clarity and intensity, which may not naturally occur. Those three states may not naturally occur in a way that you would be able to draw upon them normally. So you would draw each one out separately, sort of combine them, anchor them, and now you have this hybrid state, which is offering you more resources, more elements that you can use at any point in time, which just wouldn't occur in normal waking consciousness.
Seems like you can use any of this stuff to improve any performance. So it's not just relegated to the fight game, of course. Like, for example, even on a much lower level, let's say I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow and do an attempt at a deadlift PR, and I have a lot of anxiety going into that. What would you recommend I do?
Right. That's a great distinction you make that a lot of people don't get. It's just a matter of kind of hacking into the process that's most effective for what you're going to do and working with that. In that particular situation, I would, first of all, I'd draw out some of the elements of what's going on in the anxiety, the physical representations, what it actually is precisely that you're anxious about. But for the most part, anxiety as a structure, as a mechanism, is the exact same one that you'll find in people who are inordinately successful. And what I mean by that is they will simply take a future event that they're visualizing, like your deadlift PR tomorrow, and what they're doing at that point after they're visualizing the future event is they are having the internal sensations as if it's happening right now. Mm-hmm. So if you take somebody who is an excellent fighter, excellent in their own deadlift PRs, right? They may take something like that and see themselves succeeding and then have the internal representation, the feelings of succeeding the day before. So when you're seeing something negatively, right, and it ends up causing and building these feelings of anxiety, there's a couple ways that you can look at that in terms of just releasing the anxiety completely. What I would recommend specifically in your situation is simply see yourself at the very end and a couple minutes after you perform successfully, and then just run through the entire memory backwards, all the way to the day before, all the way until right now. Because you cannot experience a negative emotion, you cannot experience an anxiety when you're running things through backwards. So it's simply a matter of seeing a positive finish, a celebration afterwards, see that first, then move back into the actual lift, then move into your preparation, into your warm-up, all the way to the day before. And it's important to just see everything happening positively. And as long as you run it through backwards from end to beginning, when you actually have the time to experience those feelings between now and your attempt tomorrow, everything's going to sort of unwind and play through itself without that anxiety.
Right. So basically, when you actually do it, you feel like you've already done it before.
Absolutely.
It doesn't feel like you don't have the anxiety of never having been in that situation before. You feel like you've already achieved it, so now you're just going in and doing what you've already imagined.
100% correct. And every little increment that you run up to, you already know what's on the other side of it because you went through it backwards already.
Right.
You know it's a positive thing attached to it.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like looking at a jigsaw puzzle. You look at how it looks in the very beginning, and then you take it apart. And it probably helps you a lot better by doing it that way, visually, than just open up the box, putting the pieces on the floor, and like, all right, let's put this thing together and hope for the best.
Absolutely, it's actually almost the exact phrasing that we'll use into a fight, a particular round. You have all the tools, you have all the pieces, you know what the big picture looks like, and now you can assemble it the way that you want.
What are some of the common things you find? Are there any common things, I should say, that you find with fighters that you address?
Yes, there are a couple things that you're going to see in almost every instance. And when you look at actual individuals, one thing that a lot of people tend to think of fighters as, these tough guys who can handle anything, and there's a reason, for that, because of what they're doing. The interesting thing is that a lot of these fighters are becoming the tough guy because that's the way they see they're going to deal with things. So they deal with things head on. So when you know that you're going to push and power through anything, no matter what the obstacle is, that can be a good way of having that persistence and knowing you're going to do it. But if you know that you can always muscle through something, sometimes it means that you're not going to have the genuine confidence to just calmly walk through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when these guys are coming in, they may know, let's say they have a big fight coming up, and there's an opponent who they know is exceptionally good, whose record may be twice as good as his own, and he can see that and he can say, you know what, I'm a fighter, I'm going to go after it, I'm going to do my own thing, I'm going to make what I can make happen. Yet, at the exact same time, just because he's always dealt with stuff that way, he may not have an absolute confidence. And by confidence in this context, I mean a certainty that he can go in and land the shots that he wants. He may think he's just going to go in and do something crazy and give it his all, but he may not feel that he will have control of the situation. He may not feel that he has the calmness and the clarity that he needs to handle all of his objectives in the exact way that he does in practice. So we actually go in and we work on those elements of confidence a lot, because when you look at what confidence actually is, it's simply nothing more than the internal images that the athlete is making, the internal dialogue that accompanies those images, and the resulting physical feeling, all of which can be hacked, rewired, erased, rerouted.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Josh. We start talking about confidence, though. Let's talk about something that can shake up a fighter's confidence, a devastating loss. Like, how do you help these guys come back from that, man? Because a lot of times you can see some guys, it just seems like, man, they take it really, really hard. So it may have been, they may have attached such a feeling of winning that they got surprised with the fact, like, okay, you thought you were going to run through this guy, but you didn't. And he surprised you. You got caught. You didn't expect that. It's like, you underestimated the guy. Because, in MMA, anything can happen.
Well, it's like this past weekend, Aljamain Sterling fought Brian Caraway, and everyone thought Aljamain was just going to blow through him. And in the first round, it certainly looked that way. And then Brian took over the second and third round and flipped the script. So
no one ever gives Brian a chance, man.
No. We'll talk about that after.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We have some funny stories there. Yeah, but that's a great question, Sincere. I'm curious, too.
Yeah, and it's funny, you can actually see so much in a face-off with the mental states in that particular face-off. When you saw Brian didn't shake his hand, you could tell a little bit about his intensity right off the bat.
Right.
I thought that was fascinating. So when you take a fighter who has suffered a devastating loss, or let's say his arm gets snapped in an armbar, or he fractures something in his face, devastating knockouts. You can actually go in and with any experience, any memory that we have, it is simply something that we've encoded based on, at that moment in time, what we were seeing, hearing, and feeling from our own perspective. It only represents the reality that we've encoded to it. So we can go back into any particular memory, and there are some who also believe you can never access a memory without altering it in some way, shape, or form to begin with. So we can go back and we can lessen the actual intensity of the event that has left a lasting trauma. And the reason why that question is so interesting is that sometimes a guy will suffer a devastating loss, knockout, snap of a limb, and over time he can think he's over it, but not really be over it at all. They still sort of have the brakes on. They're still a little bit gun shy without knowing it. So in those circumstances, so for instance, Sincere, can you think of anything in your own experience that was kind of a devastating memory or a devastating loss or defeat of some sort?
Oh yeah, I can think of quite a few. Man. I can actually think back to probably one of the reasons why I'm probably not a big fan of jiu-jitsu is actually due to a certain school, that I went to and started training there. And they kind of didn't rein in one of their senior students who, after I tapped, he kept going with an arm bar and really jacked up my elbow, and I'm tapping this guy and tapping him. He wouldn't let go. And it just left a really bad taste in my mouth, and it's to the point where, okay, this is why I like Muay Thai. So I'm standing up and I'm putting an elbow in his neck the next time he tries something like that, and it took everything in my power, actually, not, just want to like kick the crap out of him with my knee or something, man. But, trying to be respectful of that particular school. But, it was my first reaction. So, I know people listen like, oh man, but it's not all jiu-jitsu schools are like that. But like I said, there's always going to be this thing that makes me a little standoffish about jiu-jitsu. And, especially from, high-end instructors where I felt like, they should have stepped in and like stopped the dude, Yeah. And then at the end of the day, they try to put the blame on me like, well, you didn't tap. I'm like, dude, I tapped the crap out of this dude. I was pretty much spanking his ass. We almost had to go on a date afterwards, I was so much stuff. So,
absolutely. So now when you take this,
with, jiu-jitsu now because of that.
I can't wait to see your show notes.
You take this memory, right? And you're to rate the level of the bad taste in your mouth on a scale of 1 to 10 for that memory. Where is it at right now?
Actually, as I'm getting older, a little wise with it. Like, it's gone from like an extreme. It wasn't even a 10. It was probably like a 15 at that time. But at this point now, it's like a 3, just from the folks that I've trained with and just the people I've spoken with. It's at a 3 now, where, there's certain things on the ground that I wouldn't mind training that I have trained. Actually, just recently, when I was out in Vegas with Tim Larkin, kind of some things that I actually learned at jiu-jitsu school at the same time. But when the way that Tim explained it really, kind of ease that bad taste in my mouth from anything going on the ground as far as, as defense went. So he kind of helped me kind of get over a big hump. But again, it came down to the instructor at the same time. But trust me, I still don't forget about that one dude, though. Anytime I pass that school, I think about that guy. And it kind of sucks because it's in a neighborhood I like to I go to a lot as far as restaurants and all that. And I always have to see that school. And I think about that dude, but it gets a little easier every time.
Okay, so you would put the actual experience, that memory, at about a 3.
Yeah, I'm at about a 3 now with that.
Okay, so
I'm not
interesting
over
question.
Completely.
Interesting question. If you're to look back at that memory now and actually see yourself in the picture as if you're watching a movie, right? See the entire event folding as if you're watching a movie. Now just make the screen about half the size. Drain all the color from it. Make it half the size again. Make the picture a little bit grainy, a little bit more grainy. And now just run it from the very end to the very beginning. Run it and rewind. And let me know when you're done.
Okay.
Okay. Now you're going to make the screen half the size again, a little bit more grainier. Now you're just going to run it from end to beginning again 10 times quick in the next 2 or 3 seconds. Let me know when you're done.
All right.
Cool. Now you're just going to run it 100 times, even faster, in the next 3 seconds. And you're just going to add that rewind noise when you hear like an old VHS tape going in rewind. 100 times quick, go.
All righty.
Okay, now push it out of your mind and tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you find that memory now when you try to?
Probably about a 1. Because, of course, now I'm seeing, what I could have done better. At this point, I could have did a verbal tap, instead of just going with the physical tap. And I'm pretty sure I would hope that he would have stopped a little faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can go through, we can rewire that memory. We can add in cartoon voices. We can make little changes to the image, the color, the position. We can have you seeing different things. So even now, you'll never be able to access that memory the exact same way again. It'll always be a little bit different. And the more we can minimize that, change it, shift it, push it off out into space, the more you have the ability to just kind of be done with it and start making bigger, clearer pictures of what it is you do want to accomplish, whether it's in your Muay Thai or whether it's coming back and snapping that dude's arm, whatever you want to accomplish, we can do that.
Right.
Well, what you bring up is some interesting things came up as you were doing all of this. How much of past traumas arise when you're working with fighters that maybe aren't even related to fighting, but it's having an effect on their performance?
Like the military and law enforcement, guys coming back from war, because I see that you've worked with guys in, the military, Department of Defense and all that. So that was going to be my question as well.
Right. It's all going to be on a very specific, individualized basis. And the other thing that gets really interesting with that is that sometimes you'll never know, especially if it's something that happened overseas. You might not know 6, 7, 8, 10 sessions deep into it that something may be involved with something that's kind of holding an athlete or a fighter back. The one thing within fighting that you'll find is if it's something that is a number of particularly traumatic past events, you'll usually find that the fighter is not kind of going for the same sort of goals as a fighter who may be looking at having his eyes on the belt or something like that. Some fighters will come in and depending on the intensity of the trauma, the severity of the trauma, they may just sort of be looking for a path kind of going on their own journey. So it really kind of comes down to finding, in addition to what kind of traumas may have existed in the past, just getting a really clear picture on what their goal is for the future. And that usually ends up being the more important factor as you move along.
No doubt. A lot of people have these suppressed traumas that still impact them. Maybe it's something that happened when they were a kid or a teenager, and it's been suppressed, not forgotten, but suppressed, where they're not even aware that it's in their subconscious affecting their actions in the present.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really debilitating, because you may be acting in self-destructive ways without even realizing where that's manifesting from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a guy named George Pratt. He is a hypnotist. He's practices out of San Diego, and he worked with a number of the kids who survived the Rwandan genocide, right?
Yeah.
And these were kids who saw their entire families murdered right in front of them. And he came up with these protocols to help release traumas and stresses. And an analogy that he makes is that you can see a square mile of fog, right? Something that would just blanket an entire square mile. It could be a meter thick, make it impossible for you to see your hand in front of your face. And he says it takes about 8 ounces of water, just an 8-ounce glass of water, is enough to create that entire fog when it gets diffused. And a negative event or a trauma can have the same sort of effect. Just, it can have its impact where it was, but then just create sort of a fog or lack of clarity in the future. So it's important when you tend to be able to clear those things out.
Yeah. What's amazing about that whole genocide is that I think it was 800,000 people that were butchered in 3 months. It was this horrible event. And the Hutsus and Tutsis, the two warring factions, that whole thing ended when they just had an agreement of, we're just going to stop. We're just going to forget. We're going to forgive everybody for what happened in the past, and we're just going to move forward. And that, to me, was the most amazing part of that whole thing, because essentially that's what you have to do. Otherwise, it keeps becoming this revenge cycle of, okay, you killed my mother, so I'm going to kill you, and then that person, well, you killed my brother, now I'm going to kill your brother. It'll just keep on going on forever. And they were actually able to do this. was actually successful. So that's astounding to me.
Right.
And the question is, is that truly possible,
right?
though, Joshua? Is that truly possible? You see some of these peace agreements where they just decide like, hey, we're done. But there's always someone that kind of comes back and just, they won't let it go in these societies. Like, is that really truly possible for that to happen? Like, or is there still a possibility, even in that situation with Rwanda, where somebody's like, you know what? I kind of just did my history, looked at my family's history or whatever. And, I can't let that go. We can't let that go because they may try it again. So we need to prepare ourselves so it doesn't happen again, make sure that we're the ones in power so they won't overcome us and do that again, which we see in so many other societies, whether it's in the Middle East, hell, even what's going on here in our own country. So on a lighter level.
Right. Yeah. I don't, I wonder if in some cases, we could have something happen that easily or maintain that level of simplicity in doing some of these sorts of things, But to be totally honest with you, things like that are the reason why I like to just focus on my bubble, what I can do.
Right.
I tend not to. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm gonna focus on making my day amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, the reality is civilization is fragile, so it definitely can happen again. And no one thought that another genocide could happen again after World War II with the Jewish internment camps. They're like, oh, we can't ever let that happen again. And then it happened again in our lifetime. And Rwanda's not the only one. We had the Bosnia as well. So, I mean, these and then even in current events, we've had a lot of things going on. So it's just violence is just part of our psyche, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But bringing it back to the fight game. When let's say someone Frank Shamrock used to tell me about fighters that were great when they were fighting in training camp, right? So when they're practicing, these guys are killers, but there would always be a disconnect when they get in the ring. And he said some of these guys would just be puking over and over again before they had to do the walk to the octagon. How do you work with someone like that? Because they have all of the skill sets, everything is great, but somehow there's a disconnect when they actually get in the arena.
Yeah, it's funny because just like you were mentioning when we were speaking earlier about when you're doing your public speaking and everything just starts to seem to go awry, right when you need to do it. And there's the one thing that we'll do is just have them visualize the small elements. And there's a concept of social facilitation and the Yerkes-Dodson law where they say that the pressure, the people around you, can actually help you perform better in a simple or well-rehearsed task, and it will inhibit something that's a complex task or something that is not that well-rehearsed. So that literally allows us to go in and rehearse the actual scenario so many times, whether it's just walking out or an acclimation to the lights at the elevated level of the cage, or seeing all those beady eyes fixated upon you, right? We can take them through the process so many times that by the time they're actually there, it's helping them to just kind of have the sense of familiarity that they've already been there. They've seen the people. They've seen people cheering them or booing them. And they kind of have it in the back of their mind that this is what to expect. I already know how to do this.
Did you have Matt Brown visualize getting punched in the back of the head by some crazy Brazilian fans when he walked in?
I was expecting boos down there, all things considered. Obviously, the punch in the back of the head surprised me.
That was pretty.
Yeah.
I know the fans can get rowdy there, but come on. Literally attacking fighters when they walk in. That's a little bit too enthusiastic, to say the least.
It's such an interesting thing, too, the idea of, like, punching a fighter at that level, like, in the back of the head while they're off going to do their job.
Yeah. What's funny about Matty is he immediately punched back, right? Like, that was his automatic, because he's like, look, this guy's pulling my hoodie in his direction. He's like, I don't know what's over there. This guy could have a pipe. This guy could have some kind of weapon. I don't know what he's pulling me towards.
Right. You don't know their security system compared to, like, here in the States. I mean, we know pretty much anybody gets a little rowdy. We know security's going to bum rush and take them out of there. We don't know that in other countries, man.
Right. Right. Or even be able to get there soon enough. Because there's so many people in that arena. How do you account for everyone in there? Now, I think the whole concept of utilizing pressure, though, is a really interesting one, because I've always found that I perform better with pressure, whether it's teaching a course or a workout.
Or studying for an exam in college, Just
that anxiety, actually, I've always found is a useful thing. So if I have some anxiety before I'm about to do a PR, like, okay, that actually gets me to zero in and focus a lot more and be fully present. As opposed to sometimes I've gone to lift something heavy and I go, man, I got this all day long. This is going to be easy, given what I did last week. And then, you go in and you, most of the time I bomb in situations like that because I'm too relaxed.
Yeah. Absolutely. It can be like the equivalent of almost having your back against the wall, right? You have all this pressure on one side, so you go inside and just make it happen, right?
And when I was a younger guy, I used to be really shy about talking to women, right? Even in my early 20s. And then I just decided, you know what? I'm just like, anytime I see a good looking girl, I'm just going to start a conversation and potentially try to ask her out. And, there was always like a lot of anxiety going into that, but that seemed to actually help it because, a lot of guys they're their own worst enemy because they think about the worst possible outcome, that could happen. Like she's going to laugh in your face or she's going to reject you in a way that's embarrassing. But I always found that, after a while, the pressure was kind of exhilarating. You kind of look forward to it.
Absolutely. And it's funny with actually that exact scenario too, what ends up helping a lot of people, whether it's a social anxiety or, just generally kind of dealing with those sorts of things is just making the conscious decision. And once you make this decision, you see how simple and easy it is. But make the conscious decision that you will only let yourself worry about things that you have control over. So if you're going to walk up and talk to somebody, they're going to laugh about a huge mole on your face or something like that. If you just say, well, look, I can't do anything about the mole, so I've made the decision to not care about it.
I think people don't want to be really embarrassed, right? Like you're doing that, and the girl's like, you know what? All I can think about is the big booger in your nose. Right. They're just thinking of like something they didn't take into account, like something like super embarrassing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember one time I asked this girl. I think I was 22 in Northern Virginia, and there was a good-looking girl who worked at Whole Foods, the checkout lady, and she and I had like a nice little dialogue a couple times. So like one time I'm just like, hey, I'd love to take you out for dinner or something like that. And then she said, she's like, oh, I have a boyfriend, but let me give you my sister's phone number. And then all these people in line are like trying not to laugh. They're like people right behind me. They're like, it was one of those moments where it couldn't end fast enough. You're just like, give me that fucking number so I can get out of here quickly. It's like I'm never shopping in this Whole Foods again.
She actually legitimately gave your sister's
phone number. She did. She's like, oh, she was like trying to sell her to me too. She's like, oh, she's really good looking and this and that. I was like,
she has a great personality. That's when you run.
Can you imagine calling up this girl? Like you call the house, like, hey, I was actually asking your sister out. And she shot me down, so she told me to talk to you. I'm sure she'd be real flattered by that.
In that situation, but don't you see, Josh, that like sometimes when we're all thinking like, well, I don't walk, just like you said, I don't want to walk up to the girl because I have this mole on my face, that people end up bringing attention to those things that person probably didn't even notice in the first place.
Exactly.
You're like, look, man, please don't mind my cold. I'm getting over this cold. I know, I know I got to blow my nose and everything, but I just want to ask you out. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't even know you had boogers and stuff hanging out your nose, but now that you bring it up and you just shook my hand, ew. So usually a lot of people tend to bring attention to those things that, they think everyone's going to look at, but a lot of times people don't even notice it because they got their own insecurities.
So true, man. So true.
Yeah, wherever you put the attention, right? Everything.
Well, I've done that myself. Because I've got this burn scar on the right side of my face, so it kind of looks like vitiligo, but it's called a cold burn, which was an autoimmune reaction to a severe sunburn. So anyway, this literally happened overnight. One day I didn't have the burn scar, the next day I did, and so I was really insecure about it when it first happened. And it's on the right side of my face, so I would always try to put people on the left side, but to the point where sometimes to the point where people are like, okay, I can only see the left side of his face.
I'm thinking like of Two-Face and Batman when you say
exactly. To the point like what Sincere said is, I mean, of course, everyone's going to notice when they first meet me, but if it doesn't bother me, they're going to forget about it quickly, right? That's my experience. Like if I look people dead in the eye and I'm talking and I'm charismatic, they're not thinking about it. Not in a negative context anyway. But in this context, they're kind of like, what's on the other side of his face that he keeps trying to hide? You know? It just made things worse, man. It was actually making the situation many times worse.
You know, it's funny. There's a trainer that I know, right? Yeah, exceptional trainer, right? He's in phenomenal shape, and he told me one day that he's self-conscious about bringing on new clients because he has alopecia and he's worried about some slight bald spots he has.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you know that people you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. One guy's going to be freaking out over his high blood pressure. Another dude's getting sued. Someone just lost their mother-in-law, right? Do you really think they care about a bald spot on the side of your head, dude? Do you really think they care?
It's like I was going to join, but once I saw that bald spot on your head, I realized you're not the right trainer for me.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that always goes down to all those clients always come to trainers like, well, I don't like training in at like a big gym or whatever because I don't want everyone looking at me. I said, you know what? Everyone is thinking the exact same thing. Everyone's pretty much got their heads down or trying to be distracted by watching the news while they're on the cycle or whatever else. Just they don't want to look at you because they don't want you looking back at them. I said, you're not the only one. No, everyone there. That is it's like a nightclub. That is like a big cesspool of insecurity. All in one spot right there, man.
But the reality is no one's looking at that person.
Exactly. But the only place you should feel really insecure is a kindergarten class because those kids that have no filter. They're the only ones they're not judging you. They're just telling you as it is. Just like, oh, wow, you've got that bald stuff going on. Why is your hair like that? And then
I remember
it's cool.
A friend of mine's kid, this guy was pretty overweight, right? And he took his shirt off at the pool in his backyard, and his little girl just started learning how to talk. So she looked at her dad and she goes, "Daddy, you have hooters like mom," or something to that. If she didn't use the word hooters, but something like that, dad of boobs. It's like mom's got boobs, dad's got boobs, something to that effect.
No filter, man. I'm telling you. Like I said, 3 things that always tell the truth: kids, leggings, and mirrors, man.
Well, that's why I always tell people, I go, if you want to get really good at public speaking, right, like you want to put yourself through the crucible, go talk to kids. Because if you can hold their attention, because if they're bored out of their mind, they're going to let you know that. They're going to be scribbling on a journal. They're going to be yawning.
They're like, I'm bored. When can we go home?
The only time adults act like that is at a comedy show.
Right.
So if you're not any good and you're on stage, adults all of a sudden, they're not going to be polite like they would when someone's giving a lecture.
Right.
Right. It's interesting. One of my favorite saying of all time is something that I tell all my clients who are working in a public arena and they, maybe getting a little bit anxious or nervous about what they're going to do. And that's that 10% of people are always going to love what you do no matter what. Another 10% are always going to hate what you're doing no matter what. 80% of the people just do not care one way or another.
Right.
Just do not care at all. So
we have a tendency, though, to overly fixate on the negative, don't we? I mean, for example, a lot of people could get 20 compliments in a day and 1 negative, and that's what people are going to remember more than anything else.
Absolutely.
That's got to be a real impediment to progress as well, though. There's just this inability to appreciate the positive and overly fixate on the negative.
It can be, and it's also something that can be in the fight game. It's something that can be a great motivator if somebody's getting kind of called out on something that they're not particularly good at. They can find an immense strength when they start turning one of their weaknesses or their negative points into their point of total focus and the actual thing that they're going for.
What about when someone gets too emotional, though, right? Like when Jose Aldo fought Conor. You could just tell Jose was really overly emotional. Like all of Conor's smack talking really got in his head, and that was evident
every time.
He was like a raw nerve before the fight started. Like he couldn't wait to run out there and do something, and as a result, he got tagged.
That's really fascinating. I won't look at something too much until I'm working with the athlete, find out what their individual motivations are, what their setbacks are, what their challenges, aspirations are. But the exact thing that you're saying there about his emotion kind of getting the best of him, it really became apparent when he had the belt taken from him.
Yeah.
when Conor grabbed that. You know, you could see that.
Oh yeah.
He just had control of the situation, and he was able to not just kind of have that tension there, but it was really a metaphor for how he's able to control the attack, right? To get him riled up and then just sit back, kick his feet up, do what he wants, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of became this thing he was so attached to. It's like, well, dude, if he takes your belt, it doesn't matter. You're gonna get it back. You're still the champ. You know, at that moment, it's just like it's not like he's gonna run off with your belt. Like, I'm going back to Ireland now. Bye. Somebody goes, I mean, all you gotta do is tell Dana make you another one. Like, hey, I need you to make me another belt because you can't get my other one from that idiot over in Ireland over there.
I think it was like an automatic, heated reaction in the moment where you're stuck in this zone. Like my father's a hoarder, right? And he will go to yard sales, and if there's a deal, it could be something he doesn't need at all. Like he's the kind of guy, like if there were a good deal on a bulldozer, he would buy it, you know, just because of the deal. And he gets stuck in this psychotic state where there's no reasoning with him whatsoever. Like he'll start rationalizing it. It's like, well, what are you going to do with the bulldozer, Dad? Oh, I could, he'll start coming up with some stupid rationalizations for why it's somehow justified in him buying it. So, and I see this with quite a few people. One time, I mean, he was running after a garbage truck, trying to throw excess garbage bags in that the garbage man didn't want to take. Because I think they could only take maybe 3 or 4 bags at one time, and he had a couple extra ones out there, and they refused to take it. And here's him running down the street, this crazy man, this psychotic look in his face, trying to throw these bags in. And I see people sometimes where their temper gets the better of them, and there's no reasoning with them whatsoever. It's like they're possessed in that moment.
So is this where like breathing techniques come in, Josh? It's just like take a moment, you know, before you like, you know, just explode and react, and just take a moment to breathe so you can respond. Because I always tell my kids growing up, I said, there's a difference between responding and reacting. If you're reacting, it's already too late.
The problem here, though, is you don't even have enough wherewithal to breathe. I mean, if you were cognizant of your temper in the moment, then you probably wouldn't even act on it. So, I mean, I think it almost has to be something like what you do, Joshua, where you rewire people so that they don't react that way automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. You can head it off at the pass. You can have it move into a different resource state. You can have it turn to amusement. You can have it turn to exactly like you're saying there, Sincere. If like with Aldo, he's literally having him explode in a reaction that makes no sense whatsoever. Right?
Right.
Like you can literally be like, yeah, that belt doesn't count anymore. You know, let's you know, remove the serial number, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's an invalid belt.
It's kind of like an interim belt, you know.
Actually rewire all of those responses before it even gets there.
He could have been. He could have been like, "Go ahead, take that belt. It's the only one you're going to get." Yeah, exactly. It's like, "Go ahead, take it, man. It's the only one you're going to get. Have
there you
fun
go.
with it." Yeah.
Absolutely, could have just stared at him and be like, "Yeah, dude."
Because Rafael Dos Anjos, he didn't get flustered one bit by Conor's antics, not one bit. He was just stone-faced, like, yeah, we'll see what happens, man. When we get in the ring, I'll do my talking then. And unfortunately, that fight didn't happen. I really wanted to see it, but you could just tell it wasn't getting to him. At least he wasn't visibly showing it.
Yeah, you can kind of see that in the Ultimate Fighter this season, kind of where Joanna just really getting Claudia's face all the time. But Claudia's very calm, very relaxed, you know, and you can see now that Joanna's getting really flustered now, that none of those mind games are working to the point where like she looks like she's about to explode. And of course now, you know, when they're talking in the little after show, apparently when the show shut down, when they took the cameras on, whatever else, they end up getting into a physical altercation, which I'm pretty sure that wasn't going to be hard to do when you can just see each week that Joanna's losing more and more control and her mind games are not working. And that, you know, she's probably trying to just take the lead from what she's picked up from like Ronda in the past and Conor in the past, but she needs to look at the end result. How did that work out for both of them, you know, in their last fights, you know, eventually, you know, trying to play the bully or whatever, and how that really worked out for them. They're not, you know, not really champs anymore. So, and, you know, I think Claudia's kind of, you know, figuring that out too. And she's just really calm. She goes, God, you know, even in the little vignette, she's like, I really just want to punch her in the face. I really do. But I'm going to wait because July 8th can't get here soon enough, you know, and she sees the bigger picture. She's seeing that this show is not about her and Joanna. It's about these fighters and helping them, you know, become better and actually get in the UFC. Whereas Joanna seems like she's all about her. Even when they lose, she's like, you guys are pussies, man. I'm like, what coach tells you? Why do you do that? Who does that? So you fight like pussies. You're not trained hard enough. I train hard. So everything is about her. And, you know, and that's probably why they're like 0-5 as of this week.
Well, you're always a bad coach if you have to keep using you or yourself as the example of excelling. It's like, why don't you be more like me? It's like, come on now.
Yeah, and she steps in. She's like, here, I'm going to train with you. We're going to go hard today. And I'm going to work with you. And we're going to do it like I do it. I'm like, oh, that's bad right there. And that could be, you can learn a lot from that in anything that you do, whether you're working with a trainer in the gym, or, you're a combat athlete, you're going to another school or whatever, or hell, just a business. If your manager's always talking about all his accomplishments and why, he's so much better than what you're doing and you can learn so much from him. Yeah, you might want to go seek employment somewhere else or work for yourself.
It's a good red flag for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the guys who get to that level, the girls who get to that level, a big part of what gets them to that level is these internal things that they couldn't even articulate if they wanted to, right?
Right, yeah.
So it makes it exceptionally hard to try to teach somebody else to do what you do when you aren't necessarily intimately familiar with what propelled you into your own ability to do that.
Exactly. And even speaking of Joanna, I see throughout the season, she keeps referring back to that she was ready to quit. She was almost done with MMA, and then she had this one opportunity, and then she became champ. So, how do you help people who keep reverting back to these stories? They attach themselves to these stories. Like, Mike and I always talk about these guys who will come to us like, yeah, I used to bench 4 or 5, or I used to do this when I was in high school, but these guys have been in high school for almost 25, 30 years. But they're still holding on to that one moment in time, that one shining moment, where it seems like they may have overlooked other shining moments because they keep looking at that one, they consider that one climax highlight of their life or whatever, and they keep repeating that story over and over and over. How do you help fighters get over that? Because I'm pretty sure that's pretty prevalent, where someone's had this one victory, like, oh man, I was the first, I was the youngest guy that was undefeated up until this. I was 12-0 up until this fight. But man, before that, 12-0, no one could stop me. They not realizing well, you're not 12-0 anymore. You're 12-1. Let's talk about that one. So how do you help those guys get over that hump?
Right. It's such a good question. When you, one of the things Tony Robbins always says is the only thing that stands between you and what you really want is the bullshit story you keep telling yourself.
Yeah,
about why you can't have it, right? And the stories they're fascinating because if you want to stay locked in a place, you keep telling yourself a story, and at the same time, a story can totally. It's something. What I do with a lot of athletes before we go into session is we do something called the pre-talk, where we go into their goals, what we want to achieve, what we want to accomplish. And a lot of times, 90% of the result of that session is achieved during a story that you tell in the pre-talk, because people relate to it differently. I could tell you a story about somebody in a similar situation to yours and let you know how that person handled the situation. And at that point, you don't have a capacity to consciously reject what I'm saying as advice, because I'm not telling you to do anything, just telling you what some other person did. And if I can go into the other person's thought pattern, and let's say it's the 12-1 guy, I can say, hey, look, I worked with another client and he was 15-0 and then he lost his first fight. And then he decided that, what, as long as I have that little one in my loss category, I will use that as my single lone thing that is my motivator. Every time I can look that, I know I have to go twice as hard. Every time I see that one, I know I have to prepare twice as hard for each fight now. And when the fighter hears that, he can decide to kind of change or rewire his own story.
Right.
And we use a lot of work with like metaphors and stories from the client's own life, so we can really, when the client sees that you have their best interest in getting their goal, and you give them some resources to work with, they generally find the way out of their own BS.
Right. On the flip side of that, let's talk about the guy that went 15-1, and he's used that one to be a single motivator, for his career. But so he's on the flip side of this, where he's hanging on to that story now. That one loss, and he's constantly trying to prove that he's better than that one that he has in that L column. And sometimes that can be a hindrance. How do you get him past that? At the same time, do you revert back to the guy that was 12-0 and then with 12-1? It's just like, hey man, look, this guy came back from that, but he also remembered that, that he had those 12 victories before that, and that, that one didn't determine who he was. So how do you get with the guy that's always, trying to be better than that one loss? that's my weapon. That's what I'm going to use from now on.
Well, we'll check and see if it's working. If he is 15-1 and he's obsessing over that one, and that takes him to 30-1,
right?
And say, yeah, dude, keep obsessing over it. It's working for you. It's getting you what you want, right? It's getting you the goal that you want,
right?
So a lot of times, especially in the fight game, people are going to have motivations that would not be considered ecological for your average person whose entire sustenance isn't based upon the fight game. It's not your average 9 to 5, right?
Right.
So you'll have some mindsets that let's say don't mesh well into greater society, or they're not sort of the thinking patterns that are going to be the most advantageous for your average person. So if they're getting what they want from it, then we can absolutely run with it, maybe even amplify it if that's
exactly. It makes you have to wonder, even like with John Jones, he's at this point, I don't know, I think it's like 15-1, I believe at this point, and everyone always focuses on that one, like that one shouldn't even have happened, but then you have to wonder, like, if that that DQ, if that loss hadn't happened, which really wasn't a loss, would he have still been undefeated if that hadn't happened? Or just kind of having that blemish, just kind of a reminder like, hey, this is kind of what happens when you don't take full control of the fight and you kind of, leave it to the judges, or, just be a little bit more, in the moment as far as where your striking is going, so you don't get penalized or something like that. You always have to wonder now. It's always going to be that what if factor.
Well, absolutely. The real it's a fascinating thing to think about, because if, imagine that someone else in your division is now holding the belt, but that person never beat you.
Right. Like,
how much harder may that have you training?
Exactly. Like Cormier. It's kind of like with that interim belt, John didn't want to worry. Say, this is not even a real belt. Take this. I don't want this. Yeah.
Well, the real interesting conundrum is, were John's self-destructive habits somehow useful to him excelling at a high level? And is the new clean and sober John, is that somehow going to be an impediment rather than an asset? And we don't know until we see the fight in July, and we may not even know even after then. But it's just an interesting thing, because you would think that now that he's on this much healthier lifestyle, that would be a tremendous asset. But it's possible that that balance of that wildness, that ability to just harness that side of him.
No limits, and just be creative. Exactly. Like, I'm going to try this. Why not?
Or just that side where it's like, look, I train really hard as an athlete, so I'm going to go blow some steam and be a party guy and have fun.
Literally. Low.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of reminds you, like, some of these groups that came from like the 60s and the 70s, like did some of probably the top drugs in the world. You can take something like a Jefferson Airplane or something like that, where they would, their music was really good during the 60s. They were tripping and they were high off all this stuff, writing some of the best stuff. Then fast forward to the 80s, and now they built this city on rock and roll. And you're like, whoa, something like Sarah. Like,
that's the perfect
happened?
Example. Well, like Aerosmith is another one.
Aerosmith was the one
Aerosmith did not make enough, has never made a good song since they went clean and sober, in my opinion.
Oh man, you didn't like the love song from Armageddon? It's the only one that got a Grammy for, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, they went on to be more successful in terms of finances and notoriety, but in terms of the creativity, I mean, they had some real, it's hard to remember it, but they had some real jams.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. So it's just interesting, man. Life is really interesting. You just don't know the answers to these questions until it happens.
That's, you're so right about that. You don't know until these things happen. You don't know till you even sit down and really find out. And I mean, really find out from the athlete kind of what the factors are involved. You don't know what ego state is kind of in the place that's producing any result at any given time. So it may be one of those things where cleaning up after a period of time may help someone perform better because they feel more aligned. Yeah. Or you may have the situation where when a person is feeling exceptionally confident, they feel like they're on top of the world. So they start doing ridiculous stuff, right? They might feel like a bit of a daredevil, like they feel like they're pushing a little bit further. And exactly as you're saying, until you really sit down and kind of get an idea of what's going on, then you really have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's why I always kind of laugh at these armchair fans, who feel like they're the new coaches of the year. When you watch it, like, oh man, he should have did this, or he should have blah blah blah. Like I saw the whole little pre-show when he was like training for it. He looked like he was ready. He just went in there and choked. We don't know exactly what happened up until that point. In fact, we don't even know what was going on when the cameras were actually on them, because don't forget, people, they edit a lot of stuff. They may not have edited the part where he actually like got knocked out and, while sparring or whatever, like, oh, that's not good. We don't want to show that, and whereas that knockout kind of rattled him a little bit, and he pretty much almost had a concussion, and he pretty much didn't recover from that up until the actual fight, which was only a week out from that point. So it wasn't like, and in their mind, like, well, I can't pull out from this fight because I don't want to be that guy, who gets a week before my championship fight, and then I can't do it, because they've probably talked about those guys who've done that. So they have that ego-driven thing. So a lot of times people don't understand or even know what happens up until the point. They always see the end result, and everybody out loves to make a judgment on the end result. Just like people see people doing things when they're successful, like, oh, I can do that, like being an entrepreneur. Oh, I can start my own business. But they never see, because they think that all we do is just sit around doing nothing, and money just comes to us, and we don't have to do a darn thing, and we can go take trips and hang out and do vacations whenever we want, because so many people that work, and do a 9 to 5, they want that, but they're like, well, I got to keep this job. But then they see us like, oh man, you guys make it look so easy, man. I'm going to do that. But not everybody's cut out to do it. Just like I'm not cut out to work in corporate America. I just can't do that. So you get to that point where, it looks easy from what you're looking at, but you never saw the fact that, oh man, you know how many times we failed? Actually, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to fail. And a lot of people don't want that. And then once they smell failure, they're like, I'm out. Nope, going back to my job. So can't really fail at that. All I got to do is just show up, BS around, look like I'm working on a computer, go on Facebook, but, close my screen when my boss comes by.
Well, like Matt Brown said, the truth always comes out on any objective. So, for example, when people say, I want to be an entrepreneur, or you guys make it look easy, or I could do it, well, the truth will come out if any of that stuff is true.
Right.
And the reality is, when people actually try something, on the periphery, a lot of things look easy. You actually try it, like, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I remember when I saw people snowboarding for the first time. And this is back when I was 13 or something. I go, man, that looks like a lot of fun. I go, it also doesn't look like it's that hard. I'm a skateboarder. I bet I could pick that up easily. I mean, the first couple of times I tried, it was brutally difficult. Yeah. It was difficult to even stay standing without falling over for 5 seconds. And then it took a while for that to click in. So, I mean, people that are really good at something, they always make it look easy.
Like, hell, even being
right.
a dumbass.
And it's easy to kind of get in the, it's so funny when you look at, simple things. When you look at it, people tend to have the assumption when they're reading into what they think maybe an athlete's doing, what someone else is doing. Mm-hmm. They also assume that the athlete has kind of planned out these things in advance, where they may have just done something on a whim themselves. For instance, if you look at Conor pulling out of the fight or not showing up to the media event, you have everyone saying, oh, he's scared of Nate, or he's looking to do this with, to make more money, or he just saw his teammate kill another dude,
Right.
You have all these things, but you don't know at any given point in time whether the athlete was on the fence about something, or the athlete changed his mind about something.
Well,
so
Conor may not even
into those things.
Yeah, Conor may not even have known why he bailed on that. That could have been just a moment, something he just felt at the moment. Like, you know what? I don't want to come to that press conference. And then it just escalated from there.
Absolutely. He could have been with his girl out somewhere. He could have been just chilling. Right. He could have been fighting. He could have been like, you know what? I'm enjoying life right now. I don't want to head out over there. It could have been his niece's birthday. Just, you never really know, right?
Exactly. So people love to make these grandiose possibilities. People just love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. It's another distraction. So they don't talk about their stuff a lot of times.
Well, they just enjoy doing it, right? So it's just like the media likes talking about it. People like debating this stuff. People like getting online, debating things.
Yeah, seriously, the entire weekend I was in Vegas, man, out there with you. Every time I looked up on the screen, I saw Conor and Floyd Mayweather on the TV screen everywhere we went. It's just like, I'm like, why is this such a big story? Like, really? Like, we don't have anything else to talk about? Even on the sports channels, like, there's nothing else. Aren't the NBA playoffs happening right now? But you're focused on Floyd and Conor possibly fighting? It's just like, everywhere we looked, there it was. They loved it. Even on channels where you wouldn't even think they even care about any type of combat sports, you're seeing stuff like on the Today Show and all this other stuff. I'm like, what?
Well, I mean, they're talking about it because people do care about it. People are fascinated by it. People are fascinated by the idea that allegedly the best boxer ever, the guy never lost, may fight. Both of these guys are massive smack talkers. It would be a huge fight financially for both of them. And just the idea of these these worlds that have never clashed on a high level clashing.
Well, it takes it back to the premise when the UFC first started, back in, the early 90s. Like, what if the top, BJJ guy took on the top boxer in the world and put them in a fight? Who would win? Or the top kickboxing guy, what if he took on the top wrestler? Who would win? So it's kind of come back to where everything started, with combat sports as far as, mixed martial arts is concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, coming back to you, Joshua, I would say, is there any one experience with a client you worked with, like let's keep it in the context of combat athletes, that really sticks out? Like you're like, wow, I really helped turn this guy around.
There is a particular instance with a fighter who had suffered some extreme abuse as a child, and his mother had suffered extreme abuse in front of him. And we'd only worked together for 2 fights. But the way that he started, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar or not. I guess you wouldn't be unless you'd, seen some of the results. But when you tend to work with a fighter for 3 or 4 fights, there's a resulting kind of like a residual effect when they start breaking through things. So if they had some limitations in, let's say, even with Matt, right? He had a situation with jiu-jitsu where that was kind of the piece of the puzzle he needed to figure out.
Right.
And he went into his last performance and he was performing very well. He started learning a lot of things. He's, able to control a lot of things, have a sense of awareness and clarity. And now he can sort of recalibrate for the next time. He feels like he's in a, better position with what happened. You can hear his interview and how that went for him. And every time a fighter can kind of move past through something or move through a puzzle that was sort of stopping them in some way, the growth ends up generalizing into every other area of their life. So the particular fighter who had a lot of abuses and who saw his mother, and this isn't like your average run-of-the-mill like physical abuse. This was like horrible, horrible stuff. And the moment he got through his 2 fights and he started breaking through some of the limiting mental patterns, the situations that improved in his life were absolutely phenomenal to watch, and they still are. He started producing, he started producing changes in his life that I don't think he ever would have otherwise, unless he A, didn't start fighting, and then B, didn't start working on his mindset to sort of move through some of those challenges.
So he pretty much had those proverbial aha moments. This is people like like to always refer to when it kind of helped them with a breakthrough or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. For any one of us, who fights in any capacity or has at any point, there's always a very strong metaphorical element to overcoming challenges or getting past them. And you see this, throughout every martial art with every single fighter. There's something that they're moving past or breaking through. And if it's not a particular event, they're building the methods to break through the next thing, right?
Right.
And kind of the ways that those generalize into other areas of a fighter's life is always the most fascinating thing for me.
And everyone's a fighter in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of us like watching it, because it's a physical display of our own internal battles.
Right.
So I think when you're doing something as extreme as being a professional combat athlete, you're naturally going to start releasing things that have been suppressed. It happens even in our arena, the strength coach world, where you may be working with a client where it can become a very emotional experience for them. And a lot of us can't relate to that because we didn't get that from physical training. But for them, this is the first time they're doing something arduous physically, and it starts releasing certain pain traumas in a dramatic fashion.
And doubts and things that have been placed upon them, all those growing up, that verbal abuse, like you can't do this, you want to mount to this, you can't do that.
Right.
And, they do their first set of 10 push-ups, and something to us seems so simple is a big deal to them because they were always told that they can never do these things, that they would never be able to, do anything physically, challenging whatsoever, that they should just sit there and just be a good student. You'll never be athletically inclined. To us, we think like, well, 10 push-ups, does that make you an athlete? Well, if someone that's been told that they never could do anything physically active, yeah, it starts opening up those windows, starts opening up those doors. You're like, well, damn, if I can finally do this, then maybe I can do that. And that motivates them, keeps them going.
Well, that brings an interesting point, Joshua. How much of people being successful is trying to prove doubters wrong, even your own self-doubt?
You that's one of those things. And in NLP, we call meta programs. Those are things that will be so individualized. You will almost never have the exact same set between one person and the next. If you have an athlete who's externally motivated, who is externally motivated for accolades, you'll say something to him like at the end of the visualization, notice who's cheering for you, notice the flashes of the camera, notice the way that they're clapping, notice what happens in your post-fight interview and how people respond to your post-fight interview. Notice how many likes you get on your Facebook picture. Another athlete who is internally motivated, who's trying to move away from pain points, that will literally mean nothing to him. He will not care at all what you just said to him about you're not going to feel silly, for training so hard and not getting anything out of it. That will be 100 times more motivating to the athlete who has the move away from values, the move away from internal values. So it all comes down to how you're going to key in that particular combination for the athlete that you're working with.
Yeah. Now, besides working on the mental game, going deeper into that, how often do you use actual hypnosis? And what do you think are the most misunderstood things about hypnosis?
Okay, so I use it in every single session.
Okay.
The misunderstood thing about hypnosis is, and it's been gaining much, much more widespread acceptance, and what it is when people really learn about the legitimacies and they really examine the ways in which it works. You can see all the way back to like Chael Sonnen. He said he had never performed the same again after he was hypnotized. He was hypnotized by a guy named Edward Stieg in Oregon. Mike Tyson had a hypnotist ringside at every single fight. He was hypnotized up to 3 times a day during fight days. So a lot of people don't necessarily understand that it is essentially, if you look at what it is as a process, basically you're hacking the REM state. So what you're essentially doing is increasing the signal to noise ratio. So when you've increased the signal to noise ratio in this way, you're able to get messages that are well tailored to the other person's mind, their motivations, just like the meta programs that we talked about. We key in the right message, then we get them in a super relaxed state where they're able to not critically overanalyze or reject the information that they're getting. We just put them in this relaxed state so that the message that we've keyed in properly can resonate with their unconscious mind. And then we give them the messages, the things that we came up with beforehand, the things that we decided upon that are going to get them and put them into the state where they're going to be the most resourceful.
Do you find that there's some people who just don't respond to hypnosis at all?
I haven't found any yet.
Okay. So I just think of this show here in Vegas, right? Anthony Cool, he's a hypnotist. He has this show out here. It's a really entertaining show for those of you that visit Las Vegas and look into some shows to go to. This is one of the most entertaining ones. And he'll have audience participation. So he'll bring up people from the audience. And he can tell when someone's actually responding to his hypnosis and when other people are just faking it maybe because they want to be up on stage. But the kind of things that people end up doing on that stage are hard to believe, is when you're sitting someone doing the Carlton dance, or some people just can't even remember their own birthday or their own name. It's really entertaining stuff. It's really funny.
What's funny, Mike, is that they would do that normally if they drank too much, and then we don't think twice about it. If they drink too much, all
yeah.
that stuff, like, oh, he's just drunk. But when the hypnotist does this, like, oh man, this must be part of the act. He's probably paying those guys. And so, whereas, hey man, I'm pretty sure that, I don't know, that E&J or Crown Royal didn't pay that idiot to start doing those things when he got drunk. You know, so
you have to see this to believe it, man. This is different than drunken behavior, which, believe me, I've seen a lot of in Vegas, and we saw when you were here. All right, this is almost like professional drunk behavior because it's a little bit too. It's executed way too well to be in a drunken state. It's really fascinating to watch, though.
But
when you've got a middle-aged mom of 3 up on stage, she's married, and she is
lap dancing some food,
But wouldn't that be her subconscious because she's always secretly wanted to be a stripper, but she's like, but I'm a mom of 3, and
that's
and what
probably
people think
true.
of me, you know,
and that's why they respond to the hypnosis as well. That's probably true,
right?
But it's one of those shows you have to see it to believe it. But a lot of people just think it's totally contrived. But I've seen the show 3 times, and it was obviously different people up on stage each time because it's audience participation. Right. So it would have to be orchestrated really well for this whole thing to be just some contrived endeavor, because you see these people that were up on stage hanging out at the casino, playing cards at restaurants. You see them out and about. I mean, talk about an elaborate scam where what are you going to do? You're going to pay people to go up on stage. Like, okay, after the show, make sure you're out and about where people can see you. You figure at some point someone would have pulled the curtain down on that show.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way, it's super different, obviously, the stage hypnosis stuff where they're getting them to do kind of silly different things, and especially how much they're invested in doing that stuff. Now, one of the things they'll do is they are 99% sure who's going to be picked out on stage doing what they're doing before they even call anybody up. So they're doing little tests the entire time to see who's more suggestible, less suggestible, so they can see it out. And then, exactly like you're saying, the people who really want to be up on stage, they call for people to just come running up on the stage so they know who wants to be there, they know who's suggestible, and they'll also kind of in the back of their mind know who just wants to be up there and kind of, to be the funny person when they're turned around. And that with me and the stuff that I'm doing, I will never run into that sort of situation, because there's no reason someone would, pay me the $300-$500 an hour to be the funny guy, when I'm just working with them on, on Skype or whatever, right? It might not be the best use of their time.
Yeah, you have some female client. All of a sudden she starts taking all her clothes off. You're like, whoa.
Like, now who's paying for what now? The lines get blurred a little bit.
You're like, this is a great gig. I'm getting paid for this.
Yeah, Skype billing me for a cam show. What is this?
Exactly. It's like the lines get blurred all of a sudden.
But I don't know why people are so skeptical of hypnosis, because every day we're all being hypnotized in some way or shape or form.
Of course.
Every time you buy something,
product
were
placement.
Convinced to buy that. That's a form of hypnosis. You somehow believe that this is beneficial for you. You go to my website, you read about the testosterone booster I have, and you're like, wow, this sounds great. And you buy it. There you go.
Start visualizing yourself when you're doing the benefits, or start with the symptoms, like, here's why you need this. And they start picking it apart, like, wait a minute. He's talking about me, which a lot of times, yes, he is.
I mean, you read the customer testimonials, and it's people that had the same issues that you may have. Exactly. You're going, man, here's my solution. So there you go. It's a form of hypnosis. You go to a restaurant, and someone outside is like, hey, come on in. We've got this food. You're gonna love it. It's this and that. And you're like, wow, that sounds great. Bam, you go in and buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's and it's with the hypnosis. It's interesting too, because the guys who come, I rarely have a fighter who will not keep doing sessions with me, right? As long as they keep fighting, they keep coming back because they know that it works for them. I won't say it works. I'm saying they believe it works and I believe it works, but they keep coming back. So if there's another fighter who doesn't believe it or doesn't, on the fence or whatever, that's cool. That's their thing. It just makes it better for me and the fighters who I'm working with. We've kind of got our set regimens and structures out. We're doing stuff. And I don't really run into people kind of wondering or asking how it works or if it works. I end up having to screen a lot of people based on their backgrounds and people who may not be. For instance, one of the things that we'll do is set up a state where the person feels zero fear or apprehension of going and accomplishing a physical combat goal. So you can take an average person, you can take the average guy off the street, and you can put him in a state where he has zero apprehension to go pick a fist fight with two bouncers. You can just have him not care about the results and not care about the consequences, as long as he holds on to that physical state that you can program in. So this isn't something that we work with everyone, has to be a very specific type of athlete. They have to have a very specific type of mindset already. They can't be the person who's looking to just put on a Band-Aid because they haven't, they're trying to cover up the fact that they haven't trained properly over the past 3 months. Right. They have to be someone who's just kind of completely in the game and already pushing the levels of performance, and they just want to take it to the next level completely. Right. And those guys are always the most receptive because they are already used to using their mind in a performance capacity.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, you kind of alluded to something I was going to ask you. Now, let's just say you said a lot of the clients that you have, as long as they're fighting, they still work with you. Do you, even going back to what we did earlier in the show, when you helped me kind of just visualizing the whole little jiu-jitsu incident and all that. So, okay, going from there, let's just say someone's no longer working with you. Do you find that you've had ex-clients who say, hey, man, I still utilize that one training tool, that one visualization to this day to help me with this or that? You find that a lot of the things that you've trained with them, that they can still utilize that on their own, where they don't necessarily need you. Because, you're only one guy. You can only train with so many clients in a day. I know after a while, you probably have to okay, I'm booked, I'm full or whatever else. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want that guy to fall off or something like that. And, do you find yourself where they can get a tool from you? You can give them a tip hey, just do this, do this, do this, and, and go from there, where you don't have to be present for that.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I would not do this business. I would not do this work if each individual session did not have permanent and lasting effects. I simply would not touch the work because I'm not looking to have somebody dependent on seeing me. In fact, I would rather have the exact opposite. I would rather be able to see them get what we need done and then be finished with it. The thing is about fighting is if you have someone work 2, 3, 10 sessions, 20 sessions, whatever it is, you can compound the results and the effects of things that you were doing before. So we can install this bulletproof sort of confidence inside of you in session number 1. And then session number 2, you may want to be able to relax and breathe a little bit more while picking up more movement in your peripheral vision. That may be the objective of the second session. And each session we go through putting in something new, putting in something that will get better results. And the interesting thing then by, session 8, 9 with a lot of these fighters is that we can just jump right in and start doing sort of hybrid type sessions or doing more advanced things that we can only do so easily because we've laid the groundwork in so many other ways. Right. So we can do advanced triggers that take them into different physiological states very quickly over, different periods of time. If we have an aggression or confidence or general fight anchor, which is a trigger to get them into a state, by session 3 or 4, they may have something that's coming up where they're getting caught in particular submissions, and we may be able to set at that point a escape anchor, something that gets them entirely focused, their entire mental and physical resources focused on just escaping a submission attempt. And all of these things have become a lot easier when we've already worked through the more basic stuff. So to answer your question, everything that they use is a permanent beneficial change that they keep with them. And we can always find more stuff to add in.
Now we know in probably the last 10 years, as with any self-help, NLP became a little bit more prominent, and in all types of media, whatever else. And you've got some quacks out there. Yeah, as with any of our industries, we always have these quacks. These people come, they see oh, this is the hot new thing, even though it's not really a new thing. It just now has a name that you can put on, a label that you can put on it. And basically, they're it's a quick way to make money. So how do you distance yourself from those quacks who are NLP? Because there are some people, when they hear about NLP, And they'll think like, oh, here we go with that again. Oh, is this that self-help bull crap? Or, oh, you're going to get into my mind and make me visualize or whatever else. Because there's some people that have really put a stain on that industry. The fact that it's actually an industry itself already starts kind of put a stain in it. Where, so people kind of stop thinking about, okay, these are people who are actually helping people get past some of their crap. But no one does that with psychologists or psychiatrists because you've been conditioned to think like, well, they're there to help my mind. Whereas a lot of times, a lot of NLP practitioners, whatever, are psychologists. Just so how do you distance yourself from all the quacks out there and show that, what you're doing is truly legit?
Yeah, I personally find that the best way is just to not even consider it. I have my testimonials with the fighters I've worked with. You find any fighter I've worked with and they will tell you a very particular thing about their experience working with me. And that is the only thing I can pay any attention to. Because, to be honest, I just don't give a shit what the other guys are doing,
There you go.
They may be really good, they may be horrible, but I'm like, dude, do your thing. And the moment I run into any problems with it is the moment that I'm not doing the best job possible.
Right. There's no reason for you to explain quacks anyway. Right? You're not in that game. It's like most natural testosterone boosters suck. They don't do a damn thing. Now, I have one that I believe is great, and so do all my customers who take it, and the testimonials are self-evident. So I don't have to explain why other people's products suck. I just explain why mine's great.
Exactly. So if you have every other testosterone booster that's out there, right, and some have, I bet you don't even get too immersed in the details of which ones are the very best and not the best other, because you know that yours is great, yours is phenomenal, right?
Right.
So. Not and another way to look at it is what business is it of yours to care if someone else is peddling some junk? Because what you can say at any given point of time is like, oh yeah, so and so might have been doing this, that, whatever. Yeah, you're right, cool. Try mine, you'll love it. It's amazing, right?
Right.
And what else is there beyond that? That's what you can control. That's what matters to you. And
I just don't let people put me in a position where I have to explain why mine works and others don't, and how mine is different, because on my website there's detailed information for all of that. So a lot of people will come to me and say, not a lot of people, but a few people have emailed me and said, oh, I've tried a bunch of these products and they didn't work. What makes yours different? I go, well, go read about it. Go educate yourself on the ingredients. Do some research on this stuff. I've never seen a natural testosterone booster that has testimonials like the ones I have on my website. That's for damn sure. So, I just don't waste time. I always feel that when someone tries to put you in a position where you have to explain yourself, it's a form of manipulation. They're trying to take the higher ground. And I just don't let people put me in that position. So I think it alludes back to what you're doing, is like you don't have to explain yourself to customers because you have so many people who want to work with you. You can just focus on the people who actually want to work with you, not a bunch of detractors who just want to waste your time.
Right. And and the reason I don't, even have like a normal, even like a canned response to that is because I just, I don't really like playing with the ego elements of it all. I'm just like, dude, I really don't care, If there's no danger for a consumer to accidentally drop, $500 in my pocket, right? They have to know what they're doing. They have to be signed up for it. They, all the work I've been doing, they have to apply and see if they fit, a set of conditions. Mm-hmm. So it's never anything I really encounter. But, there may be people who do doubt that sort of thing. I'm never going to be in the line of fire of their money. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
They're never going to be
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so it's irrelevant to me entirely.
I think it's good to have a clearly defined business model. Like my business is Mahler's Aggressive Strength. So right in the title that it's going to be an arduous form of strength training. This is not going to be holding your hand and we're going to cry afterwards and hug it out. This is going to be difficult, straight to the point, no nonsense stuff. So I attract a certain audience. So it would behoove me to not waste my time trying to explain why my system is a fit for people that it's really not a fit for.
Right.
Just work with the people. You have enough people that do believe it's a fit that you focus your energy on those people rather than saying, okay, let me spread the net wider and explain to people who are clearly not a fit why it is a fit. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people try to do is they try to spread that net too wide. They don't realize that there's actually benefits in rejecting people as customers.
Oh, yeah.
You should be turning down people regularly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely a very strong correlation between investment and self-qualification to do something. And there's no limit to kind of the potential of people who are kind of already sold into what you're doing. Now, if you have to go out and sell people on things, if you have to sort of explain the merit, the benefits, the results that you've been getting with your testosterone enhancement products, right? If you have to go sell somebody on the stuff that is readily available for them to see, then you probably have better uses of your time trying to convince them of something that's already proven, right?
Right. It wouldn't be worth me setting up a kiosk at the mall and having people come over who have never heard of me before, and they just see these bottles in front of them, and I have to explain one at a time the merits of this, over and over and over again, as opposed to just having thousands of people just go to my website when I'm off living my life having fun and reading all the information they need to make a purchasing decision.
Absolutely. Yeah, the only time I ever actually even get asked about people who don't believe in hypnosis, not saying that everyone does, not saying that everyone should, right? But the only time I ever get asked about it is kind of on an interview when people are finding out about the process. Because I don't have people, emailing in the website saying, does this stuff really work? It's if they're already contacting me, they've already heard about the results. They kind of know the performance enhancements. So
yeah.
It leads for a very low stress lifestyle.
A lot of people that are skeptical are probably people that are worried about being like those people up on stage at an Anthony Cool event. They're worried about giving you what they feel is that power over them, where it's like, who knows what I'm going to do in that state.
Yeah, that's totally right. And another thing that I don't really think about that often, right? Yeah. But when people are asking about like hypnosis and that sort of stuff and dealing with the people who haven't, fully invested or bought into the idea of it, one distinction with what I do is I'm working primarily, exclusively with athletes and people in those professions who need immediate results, the military, law enforcement segments. Right. And these are people who are already using their mind, so they already have that correlation and understanding. If I was focusing on people who wanted to quit smoking or people who wanted to relax or that sort of thing, I would have a lot more questions about what's going on. But there isn't an athlete, a high-level competitive athlete on the planet who isn't intimately familiar with the ways that you can adjust and shift your thought patterns to get the desired result. So that's another reason that, it just never really comes up at all.
Right. Now, I'm curious if you've ever done any sensory deprivation training, such as a float tank. Is that something you've ever experimented with?
Oh, I'm absolutely an addict when it comes to float tanks.
Yeah, you sound like someone who just came out of it. Because you're very relaxed. Exactly. The way you sound, that's probably the way I sound when I come out of this sensory deprivation tank. Because it puts you into this really relaxed state. And I think a lot of people's impediments in moving forward with strong purpose is because they have so much clutter in their mind. And the sensory deprivation therapy or sensory deprivation tank, float tank, whatever people want to call it, I think a lot of people are afraid to be in that state because it's going to bring a lot of those things to the surface to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. You are 110% alone with your thoughts. So one side of it is you may not be able to escape your thought in a moment. The other side of it is you can have the most pleasant thought in the world and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're in there naked. You can't even see the hand in front of you. So you're literally alone. You don't even have your underwear to keep you comfortable in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. I run into maybe I'd say 1 out of 10 people who don't totally fall in love with the experience. But it is such an experience,
Well, a lot of people just they go, oh, it was boring. I go, well, that means you're boring.
That means you're
Because
boring.
The only thing that's in there with you are your thoughts. So you must be really boring because that self-talk you had with yourself. I mean, to me, I went in there. It just kind of freaked me out the first time because you went in there. It's pitch black. I just felt like I was floating through space. And it was just kind of weird at first because you're not hearing anything. You can't really, after a while, you can't really feel anything because the water is the same temperature as your skin temperature. So after a while, you just lose that sensation. So it kind of freaked me out. But the second or third time, I really got into it. I really relaxed, got into it. And then eventually I just looked forward to it after a while.
Right. Did you get to any point where you were either visualizing things inadvertently, where you were able to see particular things that you wanted to see? Did you have any sort of kind of breakthrough moments?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was going things. I was having some issues with my business at the time, just logistical stuff that would normally really irritate me because these little things like that just normally get on my nerves. And when I was using the float tank at the same time, and I just found that it didn't bother me as much because I was able to think the situation through extremely clearly and accept it for what it was rather than blow it out of proportion, which is what I had a habit of doing at that time. And the other things I experienced in there is it actually made me think of things that I haven't thought of in a long time, people that I haven't seen in a long time, maybe thoughts I haven't had in a long time, insecurities about yourself that you haven't thought of in a while. So it was a really interesting experience. Every single time I went in was different than the last. And I think I did it maybe 10 times. And I haven't done it in a while because I have this theory about habits where if something is more than 20 minutes, if it takes longer than 20 minutes to get there, it's hard to make it a habit. So it has to be like if you go to the gym, it has to be within 10 minutes of your house or your office, wherever you're going to. Because if it takes too long, at least in my case, it just goes down the wayside. But it's something I'd like to start up again and commit to it a little bit more because I did find it refreshing and interesting and worthy of further exploration.
That's a great theory about a habit.
Like
there's like a distance of insulation before,
Well, I used to go to this cryo sauna, right? And it took more than 30 minutes to get there. So I paid for 10 sessions in advance. So, I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to that because I paid for it. But after that, I didn't re-up because it just took too long. And the benefits weren't commensurate with the effort. So in other words, I would have had to experience some serious benefits to justify this. And I felt like there were some benefits, but they were way too subtle for me to clearly state is the value of the experience. But anyway, if this cryosauna were, let's say, 5 minutes from my house, because I work at home most of the time, I probably would have stuck with it because the benefits then would have been enough for me to justify it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I actually even recommend to a lot of the fighters is if you can, that's funny, I never actually even thought of it that way, but if you can move as close physically to the gym as possible.
Yeah, no doubt.
Then you're in a much better space.
You have to drive 2 hours each way. That's going to get old real fast.
Yeah,
you're going to have plenty of time to think about how lame that is too. It's like, man, I can't believe I got to do this drive again. And then afterwards, I got to drive 2 hours home now. Forget it.
Exactly.
Yeah. The more you can make it routine, the better, right?
Yeah. That could be the reason why you quit the whole thing. Something as silly as that, because you're tired of that commute. When if you just lived within 10 minutes, that wouldn't even have been something to worry about.
Look, man, that helps me as an instructor.
Everything can sort of
like going to the range. It's like I got one right here by my house. And that's the reason why I go to that one all the time, and I've built up a good relationship with them. So now, I'm doing my instruction with them, even though there are a few others close to the area, but they're not as close as that one. So, and I've been to those other ones. So I've even found reasons why I didn't want to work with them. Like one guy just said something wrong. Like, I got a bad attitude, bad customer service, whereas I can go 5 minutes away from my house. I get excellent customer service and it's 5 minutes from my house. So even if my car even if it wasn't working, I could walk over there if I really wanted to, and I look at that. I'm like, okay, that works out for me. Doesn't hinder my business. Doesn't give me time to outthink all the reasons why I don't want to go. Where I can come up with other reasons like, I need to go work on, I can edit the podcast a day early today instead of driving 20 minutes over here just to go spend some money on some ammo. First of all, it's going to cost me money to drive way over there. It cost me money to spend on ammo and shoot up, all that and then come back and it's like, okay. That was that. And then drive back in traffic, which in Houston is terrible. So that 20-minute drive turns to about an hour. And you're like, dude, I'm not going through that again. So you can, like I said, you give yourself that space where you can kind of think your way out of it. And I think that's very beneficial. People can find a gym that's nearby because, of course, you're going to, especially if you come into a gym after work, you've had a long day at work and you're still going to go work out. You want to have that gym close to wherever you work. You don't want to have to travel to the other side of town, because trust me, something's going to be always better than going and working out. At least that's what you're going to justify it. Like, you know what? Hey, there's a Krispy Kreme right there. So you'll find ways to get out of it, man. So something about that convenience that does help.
Yeah, it definitely helps someone build a habit. But at the end of the day, if you actually want to do something, you're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, if the reason why you're not getting your workouts in consistently is because the gym is 15 minutes away instead of 10 minutes away, that means you didn't really care over time. But at the same time, don't stack the deck in your favor of not making it happen. Make it easier for you so you don't have those excuses. Exactly. But again, I mean, it's like Matt Brown, what Matt Brown said when he was on our show, like the truth always comes out about whatever you say you're trying to achieve. That really stuck with me, because he's right. Yeah. A lot of times when you're trying to do something and then you end up stopping after a while, it's because you didn't really want to do it. You have to accept that. Like people with their fat loss goals every New Year's Day. Yeah. I mean, and then they quit 3 weeks later. Guess why? Because you didn't really want to lose the weight. So just be fat and be happy about it. And go live your life.
Yeah, and Matt's a perfect example of that too. Just about the truth coming out.
Yeah,
you can mention a book to him. Just talking about something and say, this is a good book for XYZ concept. He'll be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And 2 days later, he'll be like, yeah, I read that book.
Yeah, that happened on our show. Mike and I brought up, I forgot what book it was.
The obstacle. We brought up The Obstacle is the Way.
Exactly.
And bought it that day.
Yeah.
And read it.
Yeah, and that's how you get stuff done, right?
That is how you used to get. Yeah. Well, Matt has a winner's mindset, like you said. After the Damian Maia match, which was a tough fight, his attitude afterwards was that's a champion mindset. His champion mindset of, hey, I went in there, I did a lot of things well. There's things I need to work on. I'm going to be back in the gym on Tuesday working on it. That's a championship mindset, rather than, it went so bad, I need to take a break. I need to reevaluate whether I want to keep doing this. That's someone who's got 1 foot out the door already.
Right, and that's such a common phrase, right? Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. We hear it all.
Reevaluate this.
We hear it all the time.
See what my options are.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows what the future holds, right?
Right. I mean, one guy,
Steve. You know if the future holds quitting, right? You know that.
Well, Steve Justa even made a point about this. Steve Justa is a famous fitness. No, I shouldn't even say fitness, because he's a hardcore strength training writer. But anyway, he wrote this book called Rock Hard Iron Will, something like Iron Steel, something like that. Anyway, he has this great passage in his book where he talks about how if you work out long enough and you're hitting this thing hard, you're going to have a lot of bad workouts over the lifetime of your workout history. And people that are committed, they don't get bothered that much by it. They go, okay, today's workout wasn't very good. I'll do better next time. It's as simple as that, rather than dwelling on that one bad workout. It's like, why do I even do this? Should I even do it again? That's someone who's not going to stick with it. That's someone when they hit a few impediments, they hit a few roadblocks, they're just going to cave. They're just going to give up.
Well, yeah, there's that fear of failure again. Some people are just like you said, we've said before, being risk averse is like, well, what if I mess up again? What if you don't?
Well, I mean, if you're risk adverse, you're success adverse.
Exactly.
But even more, even on a simpler explanation, is because you don't really want to do it. It's like, I want to be strong and powerful. Then you work out for a year, and the first year is great because gains come in fast and furious, and then it slows down, and then it comes to a screeching halt, and then it comes down to you add 5 pounds to your deadlift in a year. You're excited about that. That's someone who's committed. While someone who hits that roadblock and progress is coming slow, and then they lose motivation, they're like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'll just talk about what I used to be able to do and drink a couple Bud Lights at the barbecue this weekend. That's someone who didn't really want to do it. They just didn't want to do it. They have to accept it. So like what Matt said is so true. The truth always comes out, whether you want to do something. So whenever people say something, I want to go do this, I'm like, well, we'll see. If you actually put in the work and have a tenacious drive to achieve it, then I believe you. If not, then you prove to me and you that you don't really want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these guys, what a lot of people miss is there's a longevity and a persistence component for every level of motivation.
Right.
And in the same breath, all of these can be adjusted very quickly. The second you can come down to why you want to do something, and you can define in particular terms what the why is, you can take elements, you can amplify it, you can add in future benefits to that same why. Right. You can change these things over time.
Right.
But until you make that decision to do so, a lot of people just keep falling into the patterns of failure.
Well, you want to see Tenacious, check out this Twisted Sister documentary. It's on Netflix now. And I'm not a huge fan of Twisted Sister. I'm not even really a light fan of Twisted Sister. But I like these kind of documentaries because it showed the struggle of how they went from obscurity to a very famous band. And it wasn't an easy trajectory at all. There were so many misfires and pitfalls and near successes that just fell to the wayside. Like, I think the first record deal they got, the executive's plane crashed on the way over, and then that deal went away. And then another deal came along, and then that company went under before they got signed. And it was just I think it was like 3 or 4 or 5 stories like that before they finally hit it. And they just kept staying course through all of these pitfalls, through all of these just near successes. I think that's what really breaks a lot of people too, is when you have a success and then it's taken away, do you keep moving forward or do you give up? And a lot of people cave right there.
Yeah, they see it as a sign like, you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, we're not meant to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? That's exactly what happens. They see it as a sign. They go, oh, well, if this were meant to be, that plane would have landed with the executive. You know? Exactly. And then the second time, like, well, we already this. How many times do we have to keep on learning this lesson? If this were meant to be,
now we're being a
this
dead
deal
horse.
Wouldn't have gone over. Yeah.
Ride a cow, man. Get the horse.
But at the same time, there are some things that are worth quitting. So it's interesting. I've done things in the past where I'm like, man, I'm glad that didn't work out because that would have been a lame trajectory for me. That would have been a completely unsatisfying compared to what I'm doing now. So sometimes it's a positive thing, and you should walk away from it. You know.
Yeah, it's good to know when you're kind of, when you've got, even when you're succeeding, sometimes you have diminishing returns in a particular pattern.
Right. Well, hey, man, it's been great talking to you. We don't want to keep you on all day. So people can check you out at fighthypnosis.com. Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
That's it, man. You can come and talk to me. Anyone who's fighting.
Awesome, man. You're also on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Twitter handle is, I just changed it recently.
Oh, yeah. They could just put Fight Hypnosis in the search function too, probably.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was at The Fight Hypnotist or Fight Hypnotist, but it's at Fight Hypnotist.
Okay.
Yes, I will recommend one book to anyone who's listening, though.
Okay.
And that is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, it's a great book. It just sort of gives you, it just sort of gives you a great way to sort of look at the thoughts that you choose to have, sort of a meta level look at, what you're choosing to think and how that's going to kind of build upon all of your results over time.
Well, fantastic, man. We'll let you get back to your float chamber. And we'll
cool. I'm back in there today.
Sounds like you're in it there. Sounds like you're in it right now. It's like, I'm going to do this show from the float chamber. Okay.
Right about 15 minutes away. So
there we go. That's how you make it that habit. The 15-minute rule. Well, thanks again, Joshua. Pleasure talking to you. And
perfect.
All the
Thank you,
success
guys.
to you, man. Thank you.
All right.
Take care, man.
Take care. All right, folks. Make sure to check out fighthypnosis.com. Some of you probably need hypnosis just to support the show. And we're coming up with some.
Trust me, yeah.
We're coming up with some interesting ideas that we're going to find out who our real supporters are real fast. That's all I can say. But before we do that, we're going to take a couple weeks off because we're fed up of you folks. We need a breather. We need a recharge. I need to go spend some time in the float tank.
Yeah, I actually need to start because we didn't get around to it, when I was out there because I misread my flight time. I thought we had time on it last day I was out there in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, right.
But luckily I found a place that's 15 minutes away from my house.
Boom, there you go.
So, I have to go try it out, man. And because it's funny because Vice.com had just posted an article, I believe day before yesterday on Facebook about, float chambers now. So, it's picking up speed like in the mainstream now. And just everybody's kind of talking about all their different experiences with that. And, so a lot of people are like, oh my God, I need to try this. There's some things I need to go work out. So it was kind of good seeing that, as far as, people's reactions to that. You didn't get a lot of negativity, as far as the comments, because there's a lot of comments. So that's a good thing. So, to one thing about supply and demand. So you start getting a bunch of people, drop down that price and get better package deals. That's how I see it. So it makes it, kind of removes that barrier to entry for so many other people to do it. Because a lot of times, let's get down to the brass tacks. It comes down to price. Like, I really want to do that, but man, can't afford that. That's just kind of steep, so. It kind of helps out with that.
That's definitely true, but generally those same people have $150 a month cable bills.
Of course.
And they eat out 5 times a week.
That's why I can't afford the float tank because, I don't want to cut into my drive-through, budget.
They blow. They go.
I'm already, to my, as much as I eat in the drive-through, and when I go swimming, I'm already floating. So, I'm already.
You know what's amazing to me is people who go buy coffee every morning.
Yeah.
I go. If you're a regular coffee drinker, wouldn't it make sense to have it at home?
And then that's one of the reasons why I got into it and shared so many things. Like, you know what? You can save a lot more and actually get better coffee by doing it on your own.
It's win-win on all fronts. You don't have to
know
wait
where it's
in
coming
line.
from. You get a relationship with a roaster. And it's not as hard as you think it is to make coffee at home. And even just replicate those coffee drinks that you buy, like at the big box place where with the little mermaid that's got the green background. That chick. Yeah, you can. There's so many recipes where you can do that at home, and it's so simple. Even all those coffee drinks with those long list of names and too many syllables, you can make that at home for a lot cheaper. And you're like, oh, and you can do it multiple times a day for those that like to drink coffee multiple times a day.
But bottom is, whenever I hear excuses from anyone, I just shut off at that point. I'm like, all right, go ahead.
You're going to do what's important to you.
It's like what you and I were talking about when you were out here. I go, you try to give advice to people, and they have the yeah, but response. So my response now is my attitude now is, you know what? Yeah, but fuck yourself. Okay. Because you asked me for my professional advice. I give it to you and you respond with, yeah, but that's where the conversation ends. Exactly. It's like, clearly I'm wasting my time
for dialogue. That's all.
Because I don't enjoy wasting my time. And I don't enjoy giving people free advice either if they're not going to use it. So because what am I getting out of it? You're not paying for it. So if you're paying for it and you don't use it, fine. That's on you. But here it's like I'm being generous with my time, giving it to you. I could be doing something else. And believe me, there's a million other things I like to do than waste my time. And someone responds with, yeah, but. I'm like, all right, you know all the answers. And what are you asking me for? Go do it.
That's when you just pull up the Kanye video. You don't have all the answers, Sway. You don't have all the answers. So, yeah, man. So, but, yeah, man, it just. That whole just wasting time. Again, especially it's not like we go out and solicit our advice like, hey, I heard you had so-and-so over there. I was listening to your conversation and I was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't do that either because nobody appreciates free. Okay. Which we've learned with this show. When you just give them for free, like, well, I didn't ask you,
Well, some people, it's just the audacity. I had a guy who bought the testosterone booster, said he didn't get anything out of it. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Send the unopened bottles back. I'll give you a full refund. And which I still haven't gotten those bottles back, by the way. So he probably sold them. It was probably someone who bought several with someone else, and several people have already used it. So guess what? You can't send it back. You don't get a refund. But anyway, it was like, oh yeah, by the way, I also wanted to see if I could get on the phone with you and talk about my issues and get your professional feedback. And clearly the person wasn't offering to pay me for that advice.
Right.
I go, man, the ball's on you, man. You want to send a product back for a refund, which is fine. You're not satisfied. I'm happy to give you a refund. But we're not going to get on the phone and where I'm going to give you a free consult. That's not happening, buddy. You want a refund and you want a free consult. It's like it's just amazing to me the audacity some people have, the level of disrespect.
And if you were to get that free consult, like, would he even value that? It's just like, well, would he do any of the things that you say? There's a great.
Well, people always say, "Oh, my doctor said this. I wanted to see what you have to say."
Did he do it for free?
Exactly.
Was that appointment for free?
How much did your doctor charge?
Exactly.
You're going to pay me at least that. In fact, you're going to pay me what I think my time is worth. And if you don't want to pay that, then go read the free info on my website. I give away a ton of free information. Go buy my hormone optimization lecture series, 8 hours of great info for $50. You can use that fucking coupon code and get 10% off that. Bring it down to $45. Extremely comprehensive. Listen to a lot of the episodes we've had with Dr. Mark Gordon and Dr. Nick Delgado. Yeah, we've had so many great guests, completely free. Dr. William Wong. So, it just amazes me that you can put out tons of free information and then people go, oh, I want to pick your brain and get on the phone with you. It's like, that's not happening. So anyway, we're coming up with we're looking at changing the model for the podcast. We're having a lot of internal discussions. And I noticed that a lot of other people are doing the same thing. Like Jamie Josta, one of his show I listen to consistently. He's the Josta podcast where he interviews a lot of people in bands. And on Twitter, he was getting some feedback from his following saying, hey, what do you guys think about $3 a month, and then you have unlimited access to the show, the archives, and then I'll be putting it. He's like, I'll make enough where I can put out 2 episodes a week. He's like, or it's going to have to be 2 episodes a month, and I'm going to have to get on more sponsors, et cetera, and so forth. And it was amazing how many people are like, well, I don't want to have to pay $3. Or it's like, you're only going to keep your hardcore followers because I'm a casual listener.
Well, there you go. Like, well, thanks.
Look, man, if I listened to it 3 times a year, I'd be willing to pay $3.
Exactly.
I mean, there's nothing, man.
There are shows that, I know I gain a lot from, and I may listen to it once a month. I subscribe to the shows. I pay, and they don't even ask for much, but I'm like, dude, you're giving me great information, especially like now in the firearms world. There's some top instructors out there who are, their expertise is way more than what they're charging for their subscription model for for their website or for their shows or, for their podcast and all that. And hell, man, I'm just like, okay, dude, you're giving way more than you're asking for. But who the hell am I to be sitting there learning all these different things, learning things as an instructor, learning things as a shooter, learning all these different things, and I'm not giving anything back, So, nah, man. I mean, even the same situation we talk about our friend Tim Larkin. I'm like, come on, Tim gives so much good information out there for free, especially if you go on YouTube or whatever else. But, I'm like, come on, man, I'm signing up for his course. So you want to, when someone gives you that much and they're a great resource like that and they constantly give out good information, how can you feel good about yourself when you just constantly take it? It's like, dude, how can I help? At least spread the word, do something. They're sharing like, hey, I suggest, check out this guy's episode of this and you'll learn this, that, and that, because there's something that they're talking about or doing that's going to relate to someone else as well. Right. Point them in that direction. Like, dude, it would behoove you to take this guy's course. It'll behoove you to subscribe to this or whatever else, and just doing that, you're still helping. You're still giving something back from the information you're getting. And so again, that same thing here. You can be that. Well, I
mean, one possibility that may occur with our show as we discuss this and figure something out. But I mean, one thing would be $3 a month or $30 a year if you pay in advance, right? So you get a little discount. $30 a year is nothing. And also what it allows us to do is invest in the show further where we can improve the production value. We can put out more episodes too, because now we're getting compensated for our time. So now all of a sudden it's 8 great episodes per month as opposed to just 4. Or if we're just going to be completely free, we're going to have to reduce that number from 4 to 2 and bring on some sponsors to make it worth our time. So anyway, it's just one of those things where we harness people power to make it better for the people that are willing to fork over a few bucks. I mean, are you really going to miss $3 a month? That's somehow going to affect your overall life. Like, man, if I didn't allocate that $3 to the Live Life Aggressively show, I could be doing this. It's like, no, you're not going to miss that. And it shows a level of respect. It shows, what, I want to support you guys, and then I want to support myself, because if I support you guys, you're going to produce a better show, and I'm going to get more out of it.
And on the flip side of that, even those who like our Patreon supporters, you're going to be taken care of. You're going to be taken care of because you're the ones that actually stepped up and made the whole possibility, just even thought of this, moving to this model possible. It shows that it can work. So don't think that, all of a sudden that, things are going to increase for you guys or you're going to have to have an add-on plan or something like that. I'm just like, if you're already a Patreon subscriber, you're already in. You're
already in, and then we'll work out some. We'll work out some bonus stuff for you guys for sure. And then also all the customers that have been using that coupon code LLA, what we can do is give you 15% off as a subscriber instead of 10. So you make that $3 back on your first order of anything and then some. Yeah. And then also that coupon code would change every month so that you can't just subscribe for 1 month and then use that coupon code and then quit and still use that coupon code. It's going to keep changing. So you're incentivized to stay on. So anyway, I want it to be I want it to be something cheap enough where it's like, okay, these guys aren't being opportunistic, but it's got to be enough where it adds up to something meaningful. And then, like I said, we can improve the show. And then also there's a lot of guests that are difficult to get because they just have people coming at them, and they only have so much time. But if we actually have funds that are coming in for the show, we could actually even pay certain people that are really hard to get to come on the show that we would never be able to get otherwise.
Or on top of that, we have some guests where they just aren't available at the time that we usually speak to our guests. So sometimes you have some guests where we have to talk to them maybe in the middle of the night, 12 o'clock at night or something, or 2 in the morning for me and 12 at midnight for Mike. Yeah. But the thing is, at the same time, when the show's not really being compensated for such, because that means we got to do a lot of shifting in our personal lives and business, because that's going to affect our business the next day, because we're going to be up late with this guest. So here's the thing. If we have those subscribers and we have this model going, that makes it even more likely for us to be like, you know what? No big deal. Hey, we'll talk to that guy tonight at midnight. No big deal. You know, our fans really want to hear this guy. They're going to really benefit from what he's going to, or what she's talking about. And let's go ahead and do this or whatever. But, pretty much when you only have a select few, who are, actually believing in the show enough, like they financially support it, kind of, messes things up a little bit, especially when you have.
And then for those of you that think that, oh, well, man, you're selling so many supplements, Mike, as a result of the show. It's like, no, the majority of people who buy my products are not people who listen to the show, because exactly. I can tell who's listening. I can tell by who's using the coupon code and who isn't.
Right.
And the majority of orders I get are not people using the coupon code. And the majority of people who use that coupon code, they would probably be buying the product anyway, even if the show didn't exist. So I'm actually losing money if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So that's not enough. So my attitude is also when you buy my supplements, guess what? You're actually getting the supplements. It's not a donation. So you're getting the supplements at a discount. So don't look like that's compensation for the show. The show is a completely different entity than that.
Exactly. And on top of that, you get the supplement. You're probably not going to buy it again until you run out. So there's a little gray matter in between the time you purchase it and the time you have to do it again. And
right.
Meanwhile, we didn't stop the show between every bottle of testosterone booster that you have. It's like, well, you just bought a bottle, so no shows until you finish that bottle. And we'll start another show when you buy another bottle or something like that. So no.
And then for the people who do come on the show too, if they are talking to, let's say, a couple thousand people that are paying $3 a month, as opposed to tens of thousands of people that are not paying anything, guess what? It's way more value to be talking to people that are willing to fork over a few dollars, because those are people that are way more likely to be potential customers.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, actually support the guest, whatever they do, and not just like, okay, get the free information like, oh, well, I just heard that whole, Christian Thibodeau just talked about sprints, so, before the year's out, I'm going to start doing a sprint routine. But you have
this is just a skillful way for us to get rid of the people that we complain about, the freeloaders that have never supported the show, never will support the show. We don't have to complain about you guys anymore, because you're not going to fork over that $3,
those
and
that
we know it.
The show don't want to hear about you anymore. Our real fans are sick of listening to. They're tired of hearing about you guys, and you're talking about, why should they be penalized after they listen about you guys at least for a couple of minutes in every show? And they're feeling like they want to get rid of the leeches as well. He was like, well, hell, man, I'm supporting the show. Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, that's the other thing we would also is no more business pitches at the beginning of each episode. We would do it at the end just to remind you that you can use a coupon code to get.
Or if we have something special coming up or something like that, But
you're not going to have to listen to 5 minutes or more of us talking about our businesses. We just go right into the guest, talk to that person.
Exactly.
And then this will be interesting intel for us, because let's say we charge $3 a month, which, come on, that's ridiculously cheap, or $30 a year, whatever we ended up, whatever price we set point. Well, it's going to be somewhere in that range. Let's say barely anyone decides to pay it. Well, guess what? It means the show's now fucking worth doing at all, and we now know that, and we don't do it anymore. I was like, well, shit, we can only get fucking 30 people to pay this $3. Fuck the show. We're obviously no one cares about it. We can go and no one's gonna miss it.
No one finds value in it. So hey, you're just beating that dead horse.
But by looking at the consistent numbers that we have every episode, I can pretty much guess what percentage of that wouldn't have a problem paying that. And in my opinion, we've discussed this internally. That's enough to certainly make it worth our while to keep doing the show. And I enjoy doing the show. Yeah. I like doing the show. But if it's just charity, I'd rather spend my time doing something else for charity. If all it is charity, then I'll go work at one of the organizations.
Exactly. I'll go volunteer, at the food bank or something like that. Which,
exactly.
during that 2 hours on a Tuesday that we were recording, So. Yeah, man, it's like I said, it was just something we're throwing around back and forth. So
yeah, we'll figure something out. But anyway, we're going to take a few weeks off.
So it's going to be some best of episodes. So
exactly.
Look out for that. So we're going to pull back, because here's the thing about like Stitcher and iTunes or whatever. There are a lot of episodes you guys didn't get to hear and won't get to hear. Thanks to those mediums or whatever. So we're going to discuss like a couple of throwback like episodes to bring back, so you guys can just see that. See again. More value being thrown here. So
right.
So, or hey, we might just give it to the Patreon subscribers. How about that? Something to think about. So anyway, folks, the websites, MikeMahler.com, also NewWarriorTraining.com, 10% off all of our products using that coupon code LLA. Like I said, Mike says it all the time. You want to get some of the best supplements that you're going to find anywhere. Like, come on, man. You know by now. There's no what ifs or anything. There's no yeah buts. None of that stuff's going on here.
Yeah, the aggressive strength testosterone booster is not constantly on back order because it doesn't work.
Or that you only order like 5. You know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm ordering like 10,000 units per order, man, and it's like every few months. And not only that, but some of the ingredients are not grown all year round, like the bovine natalensis. So one of the problems is that having enough of that to keep my supply going. So anyway, that's a topic for another story. But suffice to say, it is back in stock right now. That's today. By the time you hear this, it may not be back in stock. So you better hurry up and go over there and place an order.
Yeah, and get several bottles.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, man. So head to both those websites or head over to patreon.com/LLA podcast. Become a monthly subscriber of the show. And again, we've already told you guys the benefits of that and how thankful we are to our Patreon subscribers. And last but not least, the easiest way out is to go over on Stitcher or iTunes, leave a review, rate us, and share the episode with folks on social media. I mean, come on, we make it very easy for you. There are 3 different levels of doing things here. So, hey, let's hop on and make it happen. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Catch you on the next show, which, check out those throwback episodes. And then we'll catch you guys a little bit after that. All right, folks, take care.
All right, everyone, take care.